The earth was still warm from the day's heat as Liam Tucker's shovel cut into the ground beneath the old willow tree, each strike punctuating the awful silence that had fallen over the small homestead. Katherine Wilson watched from the porch, her body numb with a grief she couldn't yet comprehend, as the man she had known only a handful of months dug a grave for his 6-year-old son. The Dakota Territory in 1876 was no place for the faint of heart. Liam had carved out a modest ranch 10 miles from the nearest settlement, raising cattle and his boy after his wife had died in childbirth. Katherine had arrived just this past spring, answering an advertisement for a schoolteacher in the nearby town of Riversbend. Young Thomas Tucker had been Katherine's brightest pupil. A curious child with his father's determined jaw and thoughtful eyes, always asking questions about the books she brought from back east. He'd contracted the fever 4 days ago. By yesterday, he was gone. Katherine gathered her skirts and stepped off the porch. The June evening was cooling rapidly as the sun disappeared behind the distant hills. She moved carefully across the yard, her throat tight with unshed tears. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry, not yet, not when Liam needed strength. "Mr. Tucker," she said softly as she approached. "Please let me help you." Liam didn't look up, his broad shoulders continuing their mechanical rhythm as the pile of dirt grew beside the small, rectangular hole. His once pristine white shirt was stained with sweat and dirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle from years of ranch work. "No need, Miss Wilson," he finally answered, his voice rough as gravel. "Your being here is enough." But Katherine wasn't the type to stand idle in the face of suffering. She'd left her comfortable life in Boston precisely because she'd wanted to be useful, to make a difference in a place where people truly needed her. She removed her shawl and laid it carefully on a dry patch of grass, then gathered branches that had fallen from the willow to place around the grave. The small coffin lay nearby, crafted from boards Liam had meant for a new bookshelf for his son. Katherine had helped him line it with the softest blanket they could find, and together they had dressed Thomas in his Sunday best, though neither spoke a word throughout the grim task. When the hole was deep enough, Liam finally stopped. He stood at the edge of the grave, shovel planted in the ground, staring into the darkness he'd created. Katherine could see the tremble in his hands, the rigid set of his jaw as he fought for control. "I can't put him in there," he whispered, so quietly Katherine almost missed it. "I can't put my boy in the dark." Katherine moved to his side and gently placed her hand on his arm. "The dark won't hurt him now, Mr. Tucker. And this spot," she looked up at the graceful branches of the willow tree. "This is a beautiful place to rest." It had been Thomas's favorite place to read during warm afternoons. He would sit with his back against the trunk, book in hand, occasionally looking up to wave at his father working in the nearby fields. Liam's eyes met Katherine's for the first time since she'd arrived that morning. They were red-rimmed and hollow, but dry. Katherine suspected he hadn't allowed himself to cry yet. Would you help me?" he asked, the request clearly costing him. Together, they lifted the small coffin. It was heartbreakingly light. They lowered it carefully into the grave, and Katherine stepped back as Liam knelt beside it, placing a small wooden horse he had carved into the coffin through the opening that hadn't yet been nailed shut. "For the journey," he explained, his voice breaking. He closed the lid and secured it with the remaining nails, each hammer blow echoing across the empty prairie. When it was time to fill the grave, Katherine picked up a handful of earth and let it fall onto the coffin. "Goodbye, Thomas," she whispered. "Your spirit is free now." Liam began filling the grave, each shovelful seeming to drain more life from him. When the last of the dirt was patted into place, he stood staring at the fresh mound, shovel dangling from his limp hand. "Would you like me to read something?" Katherine asked gently. She had brought her Bible, though she wasn't sure if Liam was a religious man. In their few conversations, the topic had never arisen. "No," he said. "No words will make this right." So they stood in silence as twilight deepened into night. Eventually, Katherine led Liam to sit beneath the willow tree, his back against its trunk. She settled beside him, not touching, but close enough that he would know he wasn't alone. "You should go back to town, Miss Wilson," he said after a long while. "It's not proper, you being out here alone with me." "Propriety seems a small concern tonight, Mr. Tucker," she replied. "I'll stay until morning if you'll allow it." He didn't argue further, and Katherine took that as permission. They sat side by side as stars appeared overhead, countless pinpricks of light in the vast Dakota sky. Katherine thought about Thomas and how he had once told her that stars were windows through which angels watched over people. She hoped he was looking down at his father now. Morning came with gentle pink light and birdsong. Katherine awoke with a start, realizing she had dozed off. Liam was still beside her, awake, staring at the grave. "He loved it when you read to the class," Liam said suddenly. "Said you did all the voices just right?" Katherine smiled sadly. "He was a wonderful student. So bright and kind to the younger children. He got that from his mother," Liam said. "She was the kind one. I'm just—" He trailed off, looking down at his calloused hands. "You're a good father," Katherine said firmly. "Thomas adored you." Liam's face contorted, and for a moment, Katherine thought he might finally break. But he stood abruptly, brushing dirt from his trousers. "I need to check the cattle," he said, his voice flat. "Thank you for staying, Miss Wilson. I can drive you back to town now." "I can walk," Katherine replied, standing too. "It's not far. 10 miles isn't walking distance for a lady," he said, some of his usual firmness returning. "I'll hitch the wagon." Katherine knew better than to argue. While Liam prepared the wagon, she gathered her few belongings and took a moment to say a private goodbye to Thomas. She placed a small bouquet of wildflowers on the grave and promised silently to return. The ride to town was mostly silent. Katherine lived in a small room above the schoolhouse, and when they arrived, Liam helped her down from the wagon with impersonal courtesy. "Thank you again, Miss Wilson," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Mr. Tucker," she said, holding his hand a moment longer than necessary. "Please don't disappear. The children miss you bringing Thomas to school. And she hesitated. "I would be very sorry not to see you in town anymore." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, but he only nodded before climbing back onto the wagon and snapping the reins. Katherine watched him go, her heart heavy with more than just grief for Thomas. 3 weeks passed before Katherine saw Liam Tucker again. Summer was in full bloom, making the schoolhouse stifling by midday. She had just dismissed her students for lunch when a shadow fell across her desk. "Miss Wilson." She looked up to find Liam standing in the doorway, hat in hand. He looked thinner, his clothes hanging loosely on his frame, but his eyes were clear. "Mr. Tucker," she said, unable to hide her surprise and pleasure. "How good to see you." He shifted uncomfortably. "I brought something for the school," he said, gesturing to a wooden crate by his feet. "Books. They were Thomas's. Thought the other children might use them." Katherine's heart clenched. "That's very generous, Mr. Tucker. The children will treasure them." He nodded, then turned to go. "Wait," Katherine called. "Would you like some tea?" "I was just about to make some." He hesitated, then nodded again. "That would be nice." Katherine busied herself with the small stove in the corner of the schoolroom, acutely aware of Liam examining the children's drawings pinned to the walls. He stopped before one that Thomas had done, a simple sketch of their ranch with the willow tree prominent in the foreground. "He was proud of that drawing," Katherine said, bringing 2 cups of tea to her desk. "Said he wanted to be an artist someday." Liam touched the paper gently. "I didn't know that. Children often share dreams with their teachers. They're shy to tell their parents," she said, offering him a chair. "He also said he wanted to be a rancher like his father." A ghost of a smile touched Liam's lips as he sat. He did love the horses. Conversation came easier after that. Katherine told Liam stories about Thomas in the classroom, and he shared memories of the boy at home. For the first time, Katherine saw the man beneath the grief, intelligent, thoughtful, with an unexpected gentle humor. As he prepared to leave, Liam paused. Miss Wilson, I visit him every evening. Under the willow. If you'd like to come sometime. He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable with the invitation. I would like that very much, Mr. Tucker, Katherine replied softly. And so began a quiet ritual. Once a week, after school, Katherine would walk the 10 miles to the Tucker Ranch. Liam would always be waiting at the crossroads to escort her the rest of the way, insisting it wasn't safe for a woman to walk alone. They would visit Thomas's grave together, sometimes bringing flowers or a new book to read aloud. Afterward, they would sit beneath the willow tree, talking until sunset when Liam would drive Katherine back to town. As summer turned to autumn, Katherine noticed subtle changes in Liam. He was gaining back weight, taking more care with his appearance. The ranch, which had begun to show signs of neglect after Thomas's death, was being tended to properly again. The Hendersons' youngest girl has a gift for numbers, Katherine remarked one evening in late September, as they sat beneath the willow. Reminds me of Thomas that way. You're good with them. The children, Liam said. They all adore you. Katherine smiled. Teaching has always been my calling. Even back in Boston, I knew I wanted to work with children. Why leave Boston for a place like Riversbend? Liam asked. Not much culture out here. Katherine looked across the vast expanse of prairie, golden in the fading light. I wanted to go somewhere I was needed. In Boston, there were dozens of qualified teachers for every position. Here, children might go without education entirely. And your family allowed it? A young woman traveling alone? Katherine laughed softly. My parents passed when I was 19. My aunt raised me after that, but she died last year. There was no one left to forbid it. Liam was quiet for a moment. We have that in common then. Being alone in the world. Not entirely alone, Katherine said, meeting his eyes. Not anymore. Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of the friendship that had grown between them, and perhaps the possibility of something more. The first snow fell in November, making Katherine's weekly visits to the ranch more difficult. Liam began coming to town more often instead, ostensibly to purchase supplies, but he always found time to stop by the schoolhouse. The children are performing a Christmas pageant, Katherine told him one afternoon as they shared coffee in the empty schoolroom. You should come. I haven't celebrated Christmas since. He didn't finish, but Katherine understood. Since his wife died, since Thomas was born, perhaps since both. It might be good for you, she said gently. And the children would be thrilled to have an adult in the audience besides their parents. To her surprise, Liam attended the pageant, sitting at the back of the schoolhouse, hat on his knee. He even applauded after each scene, his expression softening as the youngest children stumbled through their lines about the first Christmas. Afterward, as parents collected their children, Liam approached Katherine with a small package wrapped in brown paper. It isn't much, he said, looking uncharacteristically nervous. But I thought. For Christmas. Katherine carefully unwrapped the gift to find a beautifully carved wooden box with a delicate willow tree etched on the lid. Oh, Liam, she breathed, using his given name for the first time. It's beautiful. Open it, he urged. Inside was a silver hair comb with a pearl inlay. It was my mother's, he explained. Thomas always said it should belong to a lady with pretty hair. Katherine touched the comb reverently. I couldn't possibly, please, Liam interrupted. It would honor both their memories. With tears in her eyes, Katherine nodded and accepted the gift. I have something for you too, she said, retrieving a package from her desk drawer. Though it seems inadequate now. Liam unwrapped the gift to find a leather-bound journal. I noticed you whittling figures in the evenings, Katherine explained. I thought perhaps you might like to sketch designs before you carve them. He ran his hand over the smooth leather. No one's given me a gift in years, he said quietly. Thank you, Katherine. A heavy snowstorm in January made travel between the ranch and town impossible for nearly 3 weeks. Katherine found herself watching the road anxiously, worrying about Liam alone at the ranch, worrying about the grave beneath the willow tree buried under feet of snow. When he finally appeared in town, thinner but healthy, the relief that flooded through her confirmed what she had suspected for some time: she had fallen in love with Liam Tucker. That evening, as he prepared to return to the ranch, Katherine impulsively invited him to dinner at the small cafe that served as Riversbend's only restaurant. "People will talk," he warned, but there was a spark in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Let them," Katherine replied boldly. "We're both adults with no family to scandalize." Over a simple meal of beef stew and biscuits, they spoke more openly than ever before. Liam told her about meeting his wife, Martha, when they were both barely 20, about their dreams of building a ranch in the Territory, and the devastating loss when she died bringing Thomas into the world. "I never thought I'd feel anything again after Martha," he admitted, studying Katherine's face in the lamplight. "I poured everything into raising Thomas, into the ranch. And then when he died," he shook his head, "I thought that was the end." "And now?" Katherine asked softly. Liam reached across the table and took her hand. "Now I find myself looking forward to tomorrows again." "Because of you, Katherine. Spring came late that year, but when it arrived, it transformed the prairie almost overnight. Wildflowers bloomed in profusion, and the willow tree by Thomas's grave sprouted tender green leaves. Katherine and Liam stood beside the grave one April afternoon, the first anniversary of their meeting approaching. Katherine had placed fresh flowers on the small mound, which was now covered with soft grass. "He would have been 7 last week," Liam said, his voice steady though tinged with sadness. "Do you still talk to him?" Katherine asked. Liam nodded. "Every day." "Is that foolish?" "No," she replied. "I think it's beautiful. He's still your son, still part of your heart." They sat beneath the willow, as had become their custom, but today Liam seemed restless, standing frequently to pace before sitting again. "Is something wrong?" Katherine finally asked. Liam took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a great deal lately. About the future." Katherine's heart quickened. "Oh? This ranch, it's too big for one man. And the house." He gestured toward the cabin that had begun to show signs of improvement over the past months. "It's too empty." "What are you saying, Liam?" Katherine asked, though she hoped she knew. "I'm saying that I love you, Katherine Wilson," he said, the words coming in a rush. "I never expected to love anyone again after Martha. Then I lost Thomas, and I thought my heart was finished completely. But you sat with me through the darkest night of my life. You didn't try to fix what couldn't be fixed. You just stayed." Katherine's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too, Liam. I know it hasn't been proper, our friendship," he continued. "And I know I'm just a rancher, not the kind of educated man you probably dreamed of, but—" Katherine stopped him with a finger to his lips. "I don't want proper. And I don't want dreams. I want you, Liam Tucker, exactly as you are." He took her hands in his. "Will you marry me, then? Be my wife, help me make this house a home again?" "Yes," she whispered. "But Liam, you should know I'll never try to replace Thomas or his mother in your heart." "I know that," he said, drawing her into his arms. "They'll always be part of me. But my heart has room for you too, Katherine. So much room." They were married in May beneath the willow tree, with Thomas's grave nearby adorned with flowers. The entire town of Riversbend attended, the children from Katherine's school singing hymns, as she walked toward Liam in a simple white dress with his mother's pearl comb in her hair. The school board granted Katherine permission to continue teaching while living at the ranch. Liam built an extension onto the cabin, a proper bedroom for them and a small study where Katherine could prepare her lessons. In the evenings they would often sit beneath the willow tree, sometimes in companionable silence, sometimes discussing the day's events. Katherine would grade papers while Liam sketched in the journal she had given him, designs for furniture and toys he now sold in town for extra income. "Do you think Thomas would have approved?" Liam asked one evening as they watched the sunset. "Of us, of all this?" Katherine smiled, placing her hand over his. I think he would have been delighted. He loved you so much, Liam. He would want you to be happy. I am happy, Liam said, his voice filled with wonder. I never thought I could be again, but I am. As summer bloomed around them, Katherine discovered she was expecting a child. When she told Liam, he dropped to his knees before her, pressing his ear to her still flat stomach. Hello in there, he whispered. Your mother and I are very pleased to meet you. That evening, they visited Thomas's grave together, and Liam spoke to his son about the coming baby. You'll always be my firstborn, he promised the silent mound. No one will ever replace you. Katherine watched as Liam finally allowed himself to weep openly for his lost child, tears he had been holding back for over a year. She sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder, until the storm of grief passed. When he finally stood, wiping his eyes, there was a new peace in his face. Thank you, he said, helping Katherine to her feet. For waiting. For staying until I could stand again. I'll always stay, she promised, linking her arm through his as they walked back to the house that was now truly a home. Their daughter was born the following spring, a healthy girl with Katherine's auburn hair and Liam's thoughtful eyes. They named her Martha Thomas Tucker, honoring both the mother and brother she would never know. As little Martha grew, Katherine and Liam made sure she knew about her brother. A portrait Katherine had drawn from memory hung in the nursery, and they often took the child to sit beneath the willow tree, telling her stories about Thomas. Your brother loved books, Liam would tell her, watching as the toddler patted the grass on the grave with curious hands. And horses. And making your mama laugh during school. By the time Martha was 5, the ranch had prospered, expanding to include more cattle and several fine horses. Liam's woodworking had gained reputation throughout the territory, and Katherine now taught in a proper schoolhouse built closer to the ranch. One summer evening, as they sat beneath the willow tree, now grown large and strong, Liam looked at Katherine with the same wonder he had shown on their wedding day. Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out? He asked. If you hadn't come that day, if you hadn't stayed? Katherine, now expecting their second child, leaned against his shoulder. I believe we were meant to find each other, Liam. Even through such terrible grief. He placed his hand on her rounded belly. Thomas brought you to me, in a way. His life, his death, they led us here. And we'll honor him always, Katherine promised, watching as Martha placed wildflowers on her brother's grave, chattering happily to the brother she somehow seemed to know. The willow tree rustled overhead, its branches dancing in the prairie breeze, sheltering the living and the dead beneath its protective canopy. Katherine thought about the day she had sat beside a broken man as he buried his child, how she had waited through the long night until he found the strength to stand again. Neither of them could have imagined then the life they would build together, a life that acknowledged past sorrows while embracing present joys. A life where a child's grave beneath a willow tree was not just a monument to grief but a testament to love's enduring power to heal and renew. As the sun set over the Dakota Prairie, casting long shadows across the land they both now called home, Liam helped Katherine to her feet. With their daughter skipping ahead and their unborn child nestled safely between them, they walked hand in hand toward the house that glowed with warmth and welcome in the gathering dusk. The willow tree stood sentinel behind them, its branches swaying gently, as if in benediction. Beneath it lay the past, honored and remembered. Before them stretched the future, uncertain but faced together, with hearts that had learned the most important lesson of all, that love, even when born of sorrow, could sustain them through whatever lay ahead.